And that's why you definitely would.
Happy Monday, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of From the Hearts of Men radio show / podcast. I am your host, Kocysha LaShaun, founder of Be Accelerated into Purpose and the overseer of Humbled by His Grace Ministries. I am excited to introduce to you yet another special guest to the show on today. He is a senior coordinator at the ENT department of Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland. His fervor to excel and push his abilities has led him to earn an impressive number of awards at Johns Hopkins, including the Edward Halley Award, the Martin Luther King Award, the Radiology Customer Service Award for 2 years, and Employee of the Year. With a passion and dedication to further his education and help others through his teachings, this young man has earned a bachelor's and master's degree in biblical studies and theology, as well as a master's and a doctorate in Christian education at North Carolina College at Theology. Who? This man has obviously accomplished a lot. Also, he has been featured in the Enoch Pratt Library Compass in the Writers Live and in addition. His book is available in the Enoch Pratt Libraries and the Baltimore County Libraries and Dauphin County Libraries in Pennsylvania. So I am happy to introduce to you Mr., or should I say Dr. Eric Holmes on this afternoon. Thank you so much, Dr. Eric, for joining us this morning, or this afternoon rather. Please, that is a lot that I have read from your bio, but I know that there is still yet more to share. So please give us a little bit of background on who is Dr. Eric Holmes.
First of all, I am honored, humbled to be here to share with you and the listeners. So it's always a privilege whenever God opens or allows you to share what he has birthed and given to you. So thank you. It is a privilege and an honor. I'm an humble servant who said yes. Originally from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, born and raised, went to school, went to college, moved to Maryland almost 30 years ago, began a career at Johns Hopkins, come from a family of 8. And I am a, best-selling author, entrepreneur, certified life coach, and just a servant, who is trying to make a difference and an impact in the world and do what God has called me to do and walk and fulfill purpose.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, Dr. Eric, for being here. And I believe that the message and the story that you would share today would indeed leave an impact on some of the lives of our men and even women who may be listening on today. So one of the things that I know, just based on previous conversation with you, you shared something about the wilderness. And what I know is the wilderness is like that, is that process that many of us do not want to go through because it is unknown, sometimes uncharted territory that we have to walk or manage our way through. And sometimes we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if we're going to make it to the other side. And most of us are familiar with the wilderness experience of even the Israelites. And a lot of times, or several times, when they were going through that process, they were mumbling and complaining like, we were better off where we were. Why did you bring us to this point? So you shared that there was a wilderness moment in your life that you endured. And that's what I want us to hone in on and focus in on today for our episode. So share with us about this wilderness experience, what brought it about, how you maneuvered through it, and we'll just take it from there. So the floor is all yours now.
Well, one thing about the wilderness experience is that, as you said, it is unknown, it is unfamiliar, or as in unfamiliar chartered territory, somewhere you've never been, but yet you have to go through it, you have to endure it, and even you have to embrace it in order to get to the other side. And so several years ago, my mother transitioned, so a part of me was gone, never been there, because that is just one of the epitome when you have to experience the loss of a mother. And so it was right before, in the process of writing and releasing, and this happened. And so out of nowhere, talking Sunday, Tuesday, she transitioned. Nothing wrong, but of course, I always say, God's timing and season. He's the giver of life and death. And so we have a beginning and an end. And so with that transition, in the midst of writing and releasing something, I found myself in this wilderness experience, because then I was in between positions, in between jobs with our campuses. And so here it is, I've never been there, one, losing a mother, yet now having a break in employment for 4 months. So this experience was different. This was uncharted. This was unknown. I've not been here knowing that I just celebrated 24 years of my job. So in that in between, yeah, July 26th, I celebrated 24 years. So I've had consistent employment. I've never had a break in employment, even starting when I was 13 years old. But however, that experience where it shifted me, now I found myself in an unfamiliar area, having to operate in faith, in no finance, having to operate in the unknown, having to navigate through this wilderness experience, and now looking at things from another perspective. But the whole revelation of it was, and the confidence was, is that the God that I serve, he was faithful. But yet, even in the midst of that, he will give you a word. He will give you understanding. He will give you clarity. And so I tell people, you got to look at the wilderness from another perspective. You got to see it different. But what it comes to help us, to mold us, and to shape us, and to equip us for where we're going. And so in the midst of this wilderness experience, in the midst of this process that I was in, he gives me a word. He says, don't compromise your promise and settle for less. It's worth the wait. I'm going to show you how to navigate through the wilderness and get to the promise. It's just on the other side. And so here it is. I had to grab hold of the faith, grab hold of what he said. And so as I'm navigating, now I'm still in between the positions, and now I'm still operating in faith and no finance, but I'm holding on to a word that he gave me. And so my mind shifts. My mind looks at things from another perspective. Now I'm holding on to what he said. Now I'm able to navigate and get through it. Tears sometimes, hard as it may seem, but yet the word is still relevant. The promise is still good. He said, but there's no expiration date to what I promised. And so I held on to that, not knowing that if something was greater on the other side of this wilderness, the tears, the loss, but then he would place people that would help me and guide me and give me wisdom and encouragement. And I have a pastor and first lady, and she's like a mother to me. And then he places other people that were like mothers. And so here it is. In this wilderness experience, he won't leave you alone. He'll help you. He'll guide you. But it's how we look at it and see things from another perspective. And so in that, I got up every day going to the library. I was helping. They thought I was part of the staff. And so you got to shift things and look at it from another perspective, because I prepared for where I was going, even though yet I was in the wilderness experience. But God will give you a word. And I say you got to hold on while you're operating in the middle of the process. He'll show you. He'll help you. But how you look at it, how you see it, but then how you process it and what you apply. But what are you learning in the middle of this process? And so now when I look back at this wilderness, when I look what he was doing, when I look how he was processing me, when I look at all of this was for where I'm going, and where I'm going is so much greater than where I was. So now I see the wilderness from a whole nother perspective. But guess what? He allowed me to survive it, and I'm on the other side of it.
Wow, 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 wow. I love it. I love it. But we need to unpack all of this just a little bit more. We need to unpack some of this, because again, I know that there are probably some other people going through the wilderness. Like, we still aren't even out of this whole pandemic. And so for some people, this pandemic is like a wilderness experience. So I want to go back. Let's unpack this some more because I know that I can tell from just listening to what you just said that there is some more nuggets and some more areas of wisdom that we need to pull out. So you mentioned, and this is like, whoa, wow. You were working, so you shared the loss of your mom. God be with you through that. I'm sure I know that is not an easy experience. I've gone through it myself. So you shared about the loss of your mom. And then you shared after that, after working 24 years on a job that I'm sure obviously you must love, otherwise you would not be there for 24 years. 24 years, you find yourself without a job. I need you to share with us what went through your mind when you got the notification or the paperwork or whatever saying your services are no longer needed? How did they share that? And what did you feel in that moment? Again, especially after 24 years of working, what went through your mind when you were told that you were being let go or that your services were no longer needed, however they put it?
Well, in that process, it wasn't that I received letter, it was that I gave notification. And because the job was not a passion and purpose for me, as I shifted and took a career move after being in one of the departments for 12 years, and then shifting for a career advancement after 10 months. It just was not that passion. It was not my purpose, but it was a learning experience. And sometimes we in the learning experience or in the process, you got to understand that even that this is not working, or as my pastor put it, everything is not a good fit. Everything is not for us. And so in that process, I've learned, but after 10 months, it was just not serving me. And so as I went to each of the bosses, I was responsible, the administrator, the director, and the assistant director, managing calendar, their clinical schedules, because two of them were physicians as well. And so after that, because I was a people person, not only I worked in our ER and I worked in our imaging, I worked in our LBG. So I was dealing with people. I worked on the back end and all of that. But however, this being confined and being on that administrative portion of it in the back end and the executive level and learning all of this, though it was different and I learned a lot, it wasn't my passion.
Gotcha.
And so now I'm finding myself, one, because I wasn't also getting the help I needed, learning things on my own, praying. But when you come to a point that you don't feel like that you want to go. And I never felt that way. And then things was shifting, but then he gives me words to just prepare for the exit and the open door. And I didn't understand it. And so when I went to each of the bosses, and at this point, what happens is you had to be in a position a year where you can transfer out. So they did letters and all of that. But then things was starting to happen. And so here it is when I went to them, and it just started happening after I shared my heart with them. And so after all of that, he really gives me the revelation of it. And so when I gave the notice and gave them more than a 2-week notice, they had been party, all of this, here I find myself exiting. Here I find myself when he says, prepare for the exit and prepare for the open door, not understanding. But before I did all of that, he allows me to write a workbook to my first book. Now, here's the revelation of that stayed in my car for 2 years, but not knowing that how God was processing and how he was preparing. And so in the midst of that, I learned, I took away, but I said to myself, what could I have done better? And we always got to start with self-examination, because even in the wilderness, sometimes you can put yourself in. And a lot of times we don't want to look in the mirror and self-examine. And so I couldn't look at it as a bad experience. It was a learning experience, because it was what I took away, what I applied, what could I have done better? And now what am I doing and where I am? And so in the midst of all of that, he says, how you handle the middle process is going to determine the outcome. So how I was handling the middle process, I wasn't murmuring, I wasn't complaining. I cried one time because I was like, Lord, what is going on? but that was in the comfort of my home right before I went into my 1 a.m. prayer. But after that, that was it. I didn't murmur. And many people did not even know I was in between positions. Most people, even that I work with now, thought I was just on the other campus. But then when I sent a letter to the president of they's like, I need you back on this campus. Don't worry, it's going to be well. And so the favor that I have, it gave me even the assurance of the divine connections and the connections that he gave me for integrity, character, and credibility. And that's why I tell people it's so very important. So even in those 4 months, I would always say, every Christian needs every Monday off. I don't say that no more, though I like Mondays. But he gave me 4 months. But guess what? In the process of that, I was at the library. I was helping. I wrote an article, not knowing he was preparing me. I was doing book signings there. Not only that, I was helping the staff. They thought I was part of the staff. But guess what? In developing solid relationships while in that wilderness, I get my books in the library. But that connection, it would have never happened had I not gone through and where I was, had I not gone through that 4-month experience. And I was showing up every day like I was at work.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things you mentioned earlier was, so you gave the notification. Okay, thank you for clearing that part up. You gave the notification that you were leaving. I can't even imagine that type of decision for somebody who may find themselves in that same position. So you gave the notification because you realized it was not in alignment with your passion. And when you did that, and God had actually already given you the revelation, prepare for the exit and prepare for the open door. You mentioned how you also received revelation, I believe, not to compromise. So I want you to hone in on that a little bit for the man who may be listening, where you feel like maybe you're at the end of a rope, at the end of a chapter, in a position, in a relationship, and you believe that God is telling you to walk away from something. And in walking away, there may be that moment, that wilderness period where you have to wait, where you're in transition, where you can't go back, but you can't go forward just yet. So you're stuck, you're in this middle place. But there may be other opportunities that are coming. There may be other people that are coming into your life, but it's like what you said, don't compromise, don't settle for less, hold on. I want you to give us some nuggets on that for the man who might be going through that same thing. They have walked away from something or feel the urge or the nudge, the unction to walk away from something, but in walking away, there's going to be a period where you have to wait for your next. How can they adjust to that? Again, like you said, without compromising, without settling for less out of desperation.
One of the things I say to people, even with sharing, encouraging, and inspiring, you've got to trust God. You've got to trust the process. You've got to trust the God of the process and trust the God to bring you through the process. And when he allowed and gave me such understanding and clarity, even though I didn't understand it, I had to trust the God I knew, who knew all things. I had to trust him because if my faith is in him, I know if he's given me a promise and he's given me a word, it's not going to return back void. Even as I went back and had to, for the word, and apply it to my life. If they said, Abraham, go, I'll show you. So I had to be like Abraham. He had to show me. I didn't know where I was going, but if he's leading me, I know it ain't going wrong. If he's guiding me, it's going to be successful. And so I had to put my faith and trust to work. I had to put it into action. As he said, faith without works is dead. So I say to individuals or even those who are listening, you got to trust the process. You got to trust the God in it. And then you got to let faith do the work. You got to let God be God and let the word do the work. And sometimes we hold on to things he tells us to let go. If he says that's not good, he knows what's good for us. But we try to hold on to things that we should let go. And so here's the thing. When he says, don't compromise your promise and settle for less, or don't compromise our standards, like, I know how to make it work. I know how to go out and the grind, the hustle, if that's what the term. Here's the thing. I had to do it his way, because if I would have compromised my promise and settle for less, or compromise my standard and my integrity, I would have missed what was on the other side. If Caleb waited 45 years for a promise that was still good and didn't compromise, God says there's no expiration date to my word or my promise. So I've got to hold on to what he said, because my outcome is going to be greater. My outcome is going to be successful. And I say to you, hold on to what he says. You may not understand it, but you got to trust him. You may not see it, but you got to follow him, because his way is a guarantee. He will not leave us, nor will he forsake us. His word will not fail. And when we begin to compromise or allow the enemy to make us think that God is not with us, he's not for us, he's left us, we're in this wilderness alone, guess what? Now we start compromising. Now we start getting in the way. But here's what happens. We cause a downfall. We cause a destruction. We cause to miss the promise that he has for us. It's worth the wait. And so I say every time to people, it's worth the wait. May not feel good, but it's worth the wait. It may hurt, but it's worth the wait. Tears, but it's worth the wait, because when you wait on him, or as my pastor put it, waiting may not be popular, but it still works. It pays to wait on God, because when I wait on him and I trust him, my faith will move him. My praise will get his attention. My worship will unlock the door. And guess what? It'll be all worth it all. Because when the enemy allows you to see things, as they say, everything that glitters is not gold. But he never tells you that the backdrop is destruction. He never tells you that this is just temporary. I want something that is eternal. And if I wait on him and what he promised, it's eternal. It's worth the wait. And all of that I went through, when I look back 3 years ago to where I am now, yet to where I'm going, it was worth the wait. It was worth holding on to the promise. It was worth waiting and holding on to the word, because the favor of what he's doing. But how about this? In the midst of that, he calls me to write better. He calls me to see things. He calls me to look at things from another perspective. But my faith was being built. My character was being built. My integrity. And now I can be transparent and help somebody else and tell them, listen, I know what it is to operate in faith and no fine. I know what it is to operate knowing that, you're in between positions and no income coming in, but yet nothing was lost. I know I can tell you that the mortgage got paid. I can tell you that the BG&E, I can tell you nothing was cut off. And he's a provider and he's provision.
Awesome. Two things that come up that I want you to touch on. The first one being identity, and then I want to go back to also where you said still working, doing that 4-month process. You were still doing, you did some things that maybe had been put off because you had been so invested in your work, but now this free time allowed you to work on some things that you had pushed off before. But before we get to that part, I want to touch on the identity. Our identity is so important. If we don't know who we are, and again, too, we have to remember, there may be some people listening who are not even familiar with God. I want you to speak to identity for men, why that is so important in your journey or in the process? Like, did you have to go through any of that? Did you have to reaffirm yourself on some things when you found yourself in this wilderness part of your life? Like, how did you reaffirm who you were? How did you remind yourself, especially when it came to the compromising part? I'm sure there may have been some things that came up and wanted to grab your attention, but God was like, no, that's not where I want you. That's not what I have for you. Stay focused. How did you reaffirm yourself of who you are to God as a son of whose you belong to? How did you reaffirm your identity to stay up, to stay motivated through that process?
One of the things is you have to surround yourself with people who can push you, who can inspire, encourage you, pray for you, not have a pity party, but help you to
Mm,
see where you're going. You got to understand the purpose and knowing that we all have purpose. And when you always have to go to prayer and the word, because prayer and faith will always work together. The word always works. And so it makes you pray more. It helps you understand more. And so even going to the library, it caused me to help others that I wouldn't necessarily would have seen. It caused me to build solid relationships where when I did workshops there and being featured there, the audience was full. From the oldest person was 93 sitting
mm,
on the front row. But I built solid relationships helping people. And here it is, the greatest among you shall be called servant. So he put you in positions to shift you, to strengthen you, and to look at things from a whole nother perspective, and that there's more to us. And so building more of the character, building more of my purpose, and knowing even when I felt like I had to really go back to the word, Lord, I'm a tither, I'm a giver, I'm a servant, I'm helping, I'm trying to walk up right before you. And so all of that plays a part. But he'll remind you, because guess what? He'll send a sign. He'll send a wonder. He'll show you little things. It may be in a song. It was at the library. I showed up every day. And guess what? I have those relationships today. And anytime I need to send them something, to be featured, or, the help I need or helping others, I can call, I can email, and I have that relationship. And so I built it throughout the community and showing up for things. And when they were before COVID, and being able to come to community events and have things, even at the library, with no problem. And so even all of that, he was showing me, but then he was showing me how he's a provider. Like when I get a letter to saying they want to do all this upgrade to my home and it was over $5,000, he will send you a sign. And I mean, they did nothing but add value. Now, had I been there in the cubicle, I wouldn't have been able to have that done. I wouldn't have seen the letter. And so God will show you things, and that he's with you. And so he will remind you, I'm not unrighteous to forget your labor of love. He will remind you of what he said. And so you hold on to it in the midst of everything, and knowing that it's going to work out, as Paul declared, it's all working for my good. It's all working together. And so you got to remind yourself and do like David. You got to look in the mirror and you got to encourage yourself, even though nobody else is around. You got to look and encourage yourself. It's going to be better. It's working for my, and you got to talk to yourself. And so with all of that, in that 4 month, and plus I needed the rest because for 10 years, I worked 2 jobs for Hopkins, one campus to the other, and was in school full time. So he will give you a break. He will give you rest. So that's why you got to look at it. He was just preparing me for where I was going as I was turning the page and turning the chapter. I needed all this process. I needed this wilderness. But guess what? He was still with me.
Awesome, awesome. The only thing that I would add to that, especially when it comes to identity, and you talked about, you said how even David had to encourage himself, and you look in the mirror and you encourage yourself. And another thing too, with identity, remind yourself that you are a son of God. Remind yourself that you are victorious. Remind yourself that you are a conqueror. Remind yourself that all things work for the good of those who love him. There's also another verse that talks about how he who began a good work with you in you will see it to completion. So with the whole identity thing, you have to remind yourself, and again, I realize that some people may not know the word as often as well as others. But guess what? We have Google. There are sometimes I can remember pieces of verses and may not remember where it came from. I will go Google it. So here's what I want to also share with those who may not necessarily have that relationship with God or know where to look in the Bible. Google, how do I a verse for dealing with this, a verse for dealing with that. You can easily Google that and then find that verse that speaks to the situation that you're in, to now learn how to now meditate on that so that you can begin. That's how you encourage yourself, as Dr. Eric was just sharing. Encourage yourself with the word of God. It is in there how he will clean you. It is in there how he did not create you to have a spirit of fear, but one of sound mind and power, and to be bold and courageous. So everything about your identity is found, so many things about your identity is found in the word of God. So thank you for also pointing that out too, Dr. Eric. And you kind of hinted on this, or you kind of mentioned this in this, but just to kind of uh, flesh it out a little bit more. During that time, you did not sulk. You did not have a pity party, so to speak. You realized that it was also a moment of rest. Um, So let's talk about the perspective, because I've gone through that phase too, where I was without a job, and mine actually lasted for 3 years. And it was like, but it's like the 2 years or the latter part of the process, you kind of get used to it, but it's that first part and that first moment of you being letting go or you walking away from something. And it is how, okay, how do you want me? What do you want me to see? So talk about the importance of allowing God to now shift your perspective, where because some people get tied up into roles, titles, positions, and that's who we feel that we are. But our position and titles is not who we are. So sometimes God allows us to go through this wilderness process where we can now get back to who he says we are. No, you're not just a doctor. No, you're just not just an administrator. There is more to you to this. But in order for me to take you to the next level, I need to switch your perspective. So talk to us about mindset shift and about perspective. Why? Because you said that he did some of that with you, even in that process. Talk to us what that looks like.
And what that looks like is, one, our identity, who we really are.
Mm-hmm,
I'm not my job.
mm-hmm,
I'm his son.
mm-hmm.
I'm a child of the king. I'm royalty. And sometimes we lose that based on titles and positions, but
Right.
yet he reminds us who we are. And so one of the things is when he builds integrity, when he builds character, and when he builds faith, see, that'll get you through the storms. That'll get you through the fires, just like with the Hebrew boys, because their faith was strong in him. It built them in who they were, that when they got in the fire, they didn't lose who they were and whose they were. And sometimes we need to be reminded, even for those who don't believe or who may not be of the same faith as we. But when integrity and character and faith is built, it will get you through the turbulent times. It will get you through the wilderness, because you'll be reminded to rely on my faith, rely on building that my integrity, my character, and who I am. I'm strong. I'm who I am. And you build upon that foundation that was already laid. Or for our parents that would tell us, you can be anything you want to be, you can make it. And so you go back to remembering who you were and whose you are. And so now my faith is being built, my integrity, but my identity of who I am. It brings me back. So now I look at things from a whole nother perspective, and I'm reminded of from the foundation, and I was created unique. I was created fearfully and wonderfully made. So now I begin to open up, and now I begin seeing it, and now I begin to look at it and envision I'm going somewhere. I'm who I am. And so now I'm back to where I am and look at things from this whole nother perspective. It was all for my making.
And sometimes in him changing our perspective or us seeing things from a different perspective, there for many of us that goes through that, it's also about untraining ourselves, untraining getting rid of certain beliefs. Like we've grown up thinking this is the way, like you said, we been attached to positions and what people of authority, different authority figures have told us. And so we thought this was the right way. We thought this was what we're supposed to do. But when we get into this wilderness process, when God is shifting our mindset and shifting our perspective, what that looks like also is untraining certain things that we've been taught for so long. And it's like, oh, they it's not necessarily that the person told you wrong, or that it's just they meant well. They shared with you what they knew. But now I need you to see things from a different perspective. So allow me to reteach you, allow me to retrain you on some things. So thank you again for sharing that. So when you finally came out of that 4-month period, how did that feel? How going into your newness now, what was that like?
I was
I'm
I
sorry, say that last
seen
part again.
I was made better.
Okay.
I seen things different. My faith was built up. My relationship with him was stronger. I know him to be better. I mean, I know him better than I know him now. Not only that, my prayer life is even more intensified. I know him to be a provider. I know him to be so many different things as the great I am. So all of that he is all of that. And so I watch God move, and I watch him show me favor. I watch him provide, but yet and still remind me he's still with me. And so now when I came out and on the other side, I've seen doors open. I've seen ways made. I've seen favor unleashed. I've seen just miracle signs and wonders that only I know he could do. And so now I'm even more grateful and more even humble to understand and know the power of an almighty God, the power and the strength. And yet all of this relies in him. And so now I know that faith will move him. I know that I'm stronger, as Marvin Sapp would say, I'm wiser, I'm stronger, and I'm so much better because of the process, because of the wilderness experience, and because of what I had to endure to get to the other side. But it was all right there waiting for me just to show up.
Wow, awesome, awesome. Before we get to your social media and handles and all of that, I want you to give us 3 significant things that would benefit a male, again, who may find themselves in that transition period now, and they are feeling doubtful. They're feeling like maybe they did not make the right decision to walk away from something. Uh, give them 3 nuggets, 3 words of inspiration or encouragement to help them push through the latter part of their transition period.
Hang your faith on hope. Hope is the great expectation of future goods.
Say that again. You kind of tailed off at the end.
Hope is the great expectation of future goods. Hold on to your faith. Hold on to hope, because with hope, there's also great expectation. And because you've got to hold on long enough that any day my circumstance is going to change, my situation, but then surround yourself with people that can pray for you, encourage you, inspire you, even when you feel you can't yourself. And then what you have to do is staying firm and knowing that things are going to get better. that things are going to change, and that anytime he allows you to wake up, it's another day, it's another opportunity, and it's another chance. So with the privilege that he's given, the breath that he breathes in us, you've got another opportunity. And just know things are shifting and changing. Trouble don't, as the old saints would say, trouble don't last always. It's going to get better. It's a song that said it's going to get better. And Ecclesiastes 7:8 said, better is the end of the thing. And because you're not at the end, just know it's going to get better.
Wow. Thank you so much. I truly love all that you have shared. I am inspired myself by your story and the inspiration, and just also just seeing the passion fit and hearing the passion coming through as you're speaking. So thank you again so much, Dr. Eric, for being here. Listeners, I truly hope that you have gained something, that your spirit has been stirred in some way from what Dr. Eric has shared with us on this afternoon. So before we leave, Dr. Eric, I want you to share your social media handles, share your website, how can people get in touch with you, and also share about your coaching experience, as far as I know that you are the recruiting coach or a coach who recruits. So share even more about that for individuals who may want to be a coach as well. So
Again, thank you for the opportunity. It's a privilege, and not always to share my passion, but always a privilege that God gives us to share our stories. Because the word said we overcome by our testimonies, and if we don't share it, somebody who is going through it will never hear it or be
right.
able to make it through, because we are not the only one who have gone through this, because somebody went through it before me, somebody after me. And so we share it. And so I'm grateful and honored for the privilege. So someone will be encouraged, inspired to hold on, hang in there, and knowing that change is coming. And so I can be reached on any of social media: Facebook, Eric Holmes; Twitter, Dr. E; Instagram, Dr. E _ Holmes _ so I can be reached on there. For if you look on Amazon, my bio's in there. And I just want you to be encouraged. And so even for those who want to be a certified life coach, I am the director of recruitment for Life Coach School of Arkansas, which is a phenomenal school to be able to help you and push you further in your purpose, because so many of us have that in us. We just need someone to pull what's in us out of us. So you can follow me or look me up, and I can give you more of the information about it. It is an awesome, phenomenal opportunity to share. And we just go more than just a certification. We take you further into purpose. We take you further into helping push you in to your purpose. So follow me, and I would be humbled and honored to share all the information with you.
Awesome. And you're also the author. So you're also an author. So where can they find your books for anybody interested in reading more about your about what you put out there? Where can they find your books?
You can find my books on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and I always tell people this: if you just cannot get one, if you are in the Baltimore area, it is in the Baltimore City Libraries, Enoch Pratt Libraries, Baltimore County Libraries. It is also, if you happen to be in Westminster, it's in Westminster Carroll County Libraries, as well as if you are in the PA area, Dauphin County Libraries in PA. And if you happen to be in Australia, it is in Australia. And
Wow.
yeah, so God has been faithful, and you can find those on there. But if you go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, the books are on there. Or just contact me, message me, email me, and I'll be glad to make sure you get one.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Again, thank you so much for being here. Y'all, I pray that you have received something again, that your spirit has been stirred. I pray that God is just moving in your life in some shape, form, or fashion. And as we end this show, I just want to remind you, especially our males who are listening, that you are appreciated, you are valued, you are loved, you are wanted, and you are needed. And again, as even Dr. Eric himself has said, if you are listening to this that means that God still has something more in store for you, a greater purpose for you to fulfill. So don't give up just yet. Keep holding on, as he said, keep hanging on and keep trusting and embracing the process to your next. Thank you for tuning in, you all, for another From the Hearts of Men radio show slash podcast. Have an awesome and amazing day. Remember to stay safe and remember to be a blessing to someone else. Love y'all. Thanks.